The hook suspenseful start. Daniel never planned to be a hero. He was just an ordinary man who worked in the outer colonies, buying and selling ships. For him, ships were only business. They were metal, engines, and credits. Nothing more. On that day, he only wanted one thing: a cheap freighter. Something he could repair, sell again, and make a small profit. The junkyard was loud and dirty. Broken ships stood like dead giants, their wings torn, their engines cracked open. Robots moved around, cutting old parts and throwing sparks into the air. The dealer, a fat man with oily hands, smiled when he saw Daniel. "Looking for a bargain?" the dealer asked. Daniel nodded. He did not have much money, and the dealer seemed to know it. The man led him through the piles of broken ships until they stopped in front of a small freighter. Its paint was faded, its hull was scratched, and one of its landing legs leaned to the side. "She's nothing special," the dealer said quickly. "Old, slow, but she flies. If you want cheap, this is your ship." Daniel ran his hand across the side of the freighter. The metal was cold. The ship looked tired, like it had seen too many battles, too many owners. Still, Daniel felt something strange. He could not explain it, but it was as if the ship was watching him. "How much?" Daniel asked. The dealer named a price lower than Daniel expected. Maybe too low. But Daniel was not the kind of man to ask questions when he smelled a bargain. He paid, signed the papers, and by nightfall, the ship was his. That first night, Daniel decided to sleep inside the freighter. He carried his small bag on board and walked through the narrow corridors. The air smelled of rust and dust, as if no one had opened the ship in years. He checked the cockpit. The controls flickered weakly, but they worked. He checked the storage rooms, all empty, or so it seemed. When he finally lay down on the old bunk, the silence was heavy. Too heavy, then he heard it. A sound that was not loud, not clear. It's just a faint scratching, somewhere behind the walls. Daniel sat up, his heart beating faster. At first, he thought it was a rat, or maybe a broken pipe. But then came the whisper. It was soft, like someone breathing words into the dark. He could not understand the language, but it was there. Daniel stood and grabbed a small tool light. He followed the sound through the corridor, his footsteps echoing. The scratching grew louder, the whisper more urgent. He stopped at a storage panel on the right side of the ship. The sound was coming from behind it. His fingers shook as he pressed the panel. It refused to open. He pressed again, harder. The sound stopped suddenly. The silence returned, cold, heavy. Daniel laughed nervously. Just the metal settling, he whispered to himself. Old ships make noises. But when he turned to leave, the ship lights flickered, once, twice, then died. He stood in complete darkness. A few seconds later, the emergency lights came on, glowing red. The corridor looked like a tunnel of blood. Daniel felt sweat on his forehead. He moved back to the bunk, trying to calm himself. Sleep did not come easily. Every time his eyes closed, he imagined shapes moving in the shadows. Once, he thought he saw a pair of glowing eyes watching him from the corner. But when he turned the light, there was nothing. The next morning, Daniel told himself he had only been tired. Long travel, bad food, and the junkyard smell had played with his mind. Still, he could not shake the feeling that he was not alone. He began checking the ship more carefully. He tapped the walls, searched under the floor panels, scanned the storage rooms again. Nothing. The ship was empty, or at least it looked empty. But then, in the cockpit, something strange happened. The navigation screen lit up on its own. A map appeared with a route already drawn. Daniel had not touched the controls. He had not entered any coordinates. The route ended in deep space, far away from any trade lanes, a place no one had reason to visit. Daniel stared at the glowing screen. What the hell? He muttered. At that moment, he heard the whisper again. Clearer this time. A soft voice, like a child crying in the distance. Daniel's hands turned cold. His heart pounded. He spun around, shining his light into the cockpit, into the corridor. Into every corner, no one. The voice stopped. The map on the screen vanished. Only silence remained. Daniel tried to tell himself it was just the ship's old computer, broken and confused. But deep inside, he knew better. Something or someone was inside this ship, and whatever it was, it wanted him to find it. The discovery Daniel could not forget the strange night. The whispers, the red lights, the sudden map on the screen. All of it haunted him. He told himself it was only the ship's broken systems. But deep inside, he knew something was wrong. Something was hiding. The second night, Daniel prepared. He kept his tool light ready, along with a small blaster. He carried for safety. He sat in the cockpit, watching the control panels. Hours passed in silence. The ship seemed almost dead. Then it began again. A faint sound, a scratching, like nails moving across metal. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He stood slowly. Every muscle tense and followed the noise. It led him back to the same storage panel he had touched before. The one that had refused to open. Now, the sound was louder. Not only scratching, breathing. He raised his blaster. "Who's there?" called out. His voice shook, but the corridor swallowed the words like a grave. No reply. Daniel set his blaster aside and tried again with his hands. He pulled at the panel, pushed against the edges. Nothing. Finally, with a growl of frustration, he grabbed a crowbar from his toolkit and jammed it into the crack. The metal groaned, resisting. He pushed harder. The panel burst open with a sharp clang. Daniel froze. Inside, pressed against the corner, was a small figure. Thin arms, pale skin, and wide golden eyes that glowed faintly in the red light. A child, an alien child. The child gasped in fear and pressed back against the wall, covering its face. Daniel dropped the crowbar, stunned. He'd expected smuggled goods, stolen tech, maybe a dead rat. Not this. Easy. He whispered, raising his hands to show he was not a threat. "I won't hurt you." The child trembled, its chest rising and falling quickly. Then, from the shadows, another shape moved. A taller figure. Daniel's eyes widened as a woman stepped out. Not human, but clearly the child's mother. Her skin was the same pale shade, her eyes glowing with the same golden light. She held her arms wide, standing protectively in front of the child. Her face was tired, her clothes torn, yet her presence was powerful. Her eyes locked on Daniel with a fierce warning. "Come closer, and you will regret it." Daniel raised his hands higher. "Wait, I didn't know anyone was here. This ship, I bought it. I thought it was empty." For a long moment, silence filled the corridor. Then the woman spoke. Her voice was soft but sharp, carried through a small translator hanging from her neck. "Not empty," she said. Her accent was strange, her words heavy. "Never empty." Daniel swallowed hard. "You've been hiding here?" She didn't answer. She only glanced at her child, who was peeking from behind her arm. The child whispered something in a language Daniel didn't understand. The translator didn't catch it. The woman sighed, then spoke again. "We had no choice. War, hunters. We ran. This ship was the only place left." Her voice cracked. On the last words, Daniel felt his chest tighten. She wasn't a smuggler or a criminal. She was a refugee. "How long?" Daniel asked quietly. "Too long," she replied. Daniel looked at them, thin, weak, afraid. They had been living inside the walls, hiding from anyone who might discover them. And now, by buying the ship, he had uncovered their secret. He stepped back slowly, trying not to scare them. "I won't tell anyone," he said. "You're safe with me." But even as he said the words, he knew they weren't true. Because if the dealer had sold him this ship so cheaply, then maybe the dealer knew. Maybe he had planted a tracker. Maybe hunters were already coming. Daniel's stomach turned cold. The woman must have seen the change in his face. "They will come," she said softly. "They always come." The child clung to her arm, whispering again, frightened. Daniel shook his head. "No, not if I can help it." That night, Daniel could not sleep. He sat in the cockpit, staring at the stars. He thought about the child's glowing eyes, the mother's broken voice, the fear in their faces. They were alone, hunted, and now they were his responsibility. The freighter was no longer just a machine for profit. It was a hiding place, a secret shelter, and Daniel had a choice. He could abandon them, sell the ship, walk away, forget he ever found them. Or he could help, protect them. He touched the controls. The ship hummed, alive under his hands. Somewhere in the walls, the child shifted, whispering softly to the mother. Daniel closed his eyes. He already knew his answer. But outside, in the black sea of space, a small signal blinked. A tracker, hidden deep in the freighter's hull, sent out a silent call. Far away, in the shadow of a warship, mercenaries received the signal. They turned their ships toward Daniel's freighter. The hunt had begun. The secret, explained Daniel, sat in the cockpit, his eyes heavy from lack of sleep. He had discovered the truth. The whispers were not ghosts, not machines. They were a mother and her child, hiding in the dark corners of his new freighter. Refugees. Alone. Afraid mourning on a ship was not like mourning on a planet. There was no sunrise, no birds, no fresh air. Only the same hum of engines, the same cold walls. But this morning, the air felt different. The silence between Daniel and the aliens pressed on him like weight. He knew he had to talk to them. He had to understand why they were here and what danger followed them. He walked slowly to the storage bay. The panel he had broken open still hung loose, its edges bent. Inside, the child was curled up against the woman, eyes wide and glowing, faintly in the dim light. The mother looked up as Daniel entered. Her expression was calm, but her body stood like a shield between him and the child. "I'm not here to hurt you," Daniel said softly. He kept his hands visible. No weapons. No sudden moves. The woman studied him, then nodded once. She tapped the translator on her neck. "You want answers." "Yes," Daniel admitted. He lowered himself to sit on the floor, keeping distance so they would not feel trapped. "Why are you here? Who is chasing you?" The woman hesitated, as if deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she spoke. "My name is Alira," she said. Her voice through the translator was soft, tired, but carried strength. She touched the child's head gently. "This is my son, Kale." Kale peeked out from behind her arm, his golden eyes meeting Daniel's. There was curiosity there, mixed with fear. Daniel gave a small, nervous smile. Alira continued. "We come from a world far beyond these stars. A green world, rich with life. My people. We were healers, farmers, singers. We did not fight. We did not build weapons." Her voice broke, and she closed her eyes. "That is why we were easy prey." Daniel leaned forward, listening. "The Dominion," she whispered. "A vast empire. They came with fire and chains. They burned our homes, captured our people. They want power, and my people, we are different. Our blood, our minds. They can use us as tools, as weapons." Her hand trembled as she held Kale close. "We escaped, only a few of us. My mate was taken. Many others too. Kale and I. We hid. We found this old ship, broken, forgotten. It became our cave in the storm. For months, we stayed in its walls, silent, waiting, hoping. Daniel's chest tightened. He had seen wars, yes, but never like this. He had never seen such quiet pain in someone's eyes. And now? He asked. They hunt us still, Alira said. They will not stop. They can smell us even across the stars. That is why we hide. She looked directly into Daniel's eyes. Her golden gaze was sharp, almost burning. And now you have found us. You should leave. Take your credits. Walk away. This is not your fight. Daniel sat there in silence. Part of him wanted to agree. It would be easier, safer. He had only bought a ship, nothing more. He had not asked for a war, but another part of him, the part that remembered Kale's frightened eyes and Alira's shaking hands, refused. I can't walk away, Daniel said quietly. Not now. Not after seeing this. Alira frowned. Why? You owe us nothing. Daniel gave a small laugh, but it was bitter. Because I'm human. And humans, we don't always do what makes sense. Sometimes we do what feels right. Even if it gets us killed. For the first time, Alira's hard expression softened. She tilted her head, studying him. Perhaps she had expected greed, fear, betrayal, but not this. Kale whispered something to her in their own language. The translator did not catch the words, but Alira's lips curved into the faintest smile. She touched her son's hair gently. He says you are strange, she explained. Strange, but kind. Daniel chuckled. That sounds about right. The moment did not last. A sudden beep echoed from the cockpit. A warning light. Daniel frowned and rushed forward. On the navigation screen, a red symbol blinked. Tracker signal detected, the ship's computer said in a flat voice. Daniel's stomach dropped. The dealer, the bastard, must have planted it. That was why the ship had been so cheap. He sold it knowing it carried fugitives. Alira appeared behind him, her face pale. They are coming, she whispered. The hunters. They have found us. Kale's small voice echoed hers, full of fear. Daniel clenched his fists. His mind raced. The ship was slow, old. They couldn't outrun mercenaries and war cruisers. And he wasn't a soldier, just a trader with basic skills. But he had something else. He had the human instinct to fight back, to survive, to adapt. He turned to Alira. Then we get ready, he said. His voice was steady now, stronger. If they're coming, we won't make it easy for them. Alira's eyes widened. You will help us. Daniel nodded firmly. I told you, I can't walk away. Not now. For the first time, true hope flickered in Alira's golden eyes. Daniel moved quickly. He pulled out his tools, checked the weapon system weak, but still functional. He patched the engine with spare wires, recharged the shields as best he could. Alira watched him, amazed at how humans could turn broken scraps into working. Machines. Kale followed him like a shadow, curious about every move. When Daniel tightened a bolt, Kale tried to copy him with a small tool. For a moment, despite the danger, there was almost a sense of family. But outside, the stars were shifting, and somewhere in the darkness, ships were already closing in. The chase begins. The freighter shuddered as Daniel pushed the old engines to life. The ship's frame groaned like a tired beast, metal rattling, panels vibrating. It was not built for speed, not built for running. But now it had no choice. On the cockpit screen, red dots appeared. Enemy ships. Small, fast hunters, closing the distance with every second. Daniel's hands tightened on the controls. His heart pounded in his chest. He had flown ships before, but never like this. Never with lives depending on him. Behind him, Alira stood tall, her son Cale clutching her hand. Her face was pale, but her voice was calm. "They are here." Daniel nodded, jaw clenched. "Yeah, and they're faster than us." The freighter lurched forward into open space. Stars stretched across the black, cold and endless. The hunters grew larger on the radar. Suddenly, the ship shook. Boom! The first blast struck the shields, a burst of blue fire flashing across the viewport. Alarms screamed. The shields flickered, already weaker than they should be. Cale cried out and pressed his face against his mother's side. Alira pulled him close, whispering softly in her own tongue to calm him. Daniel gritted his teeth. "Hold on." He yanked the control stick, throwing the freighter into a sharp dive. The old ship groaned, but it responded. The hunters overshot for a moment, then swung back in pursuit. "Can this ship fight?" Daniel shouted over the alarms. Alira shook her head. "Its weapons are broken. They will not stop them." Daniel cursed under his breath. No guns, no speed. Only his hands, his wits, and luck. The hunters fired again. Bolts of plasma streaked past the freighter, lighting the dark like fire arrows. Daniel twisted the ship left, then right, dodging what he could. Sparks flew inside the cockpit as panels overloaded. Come on," he muttered, slamming the side of the console when a screen went dark. The hunters closed in, their sleek, black ships circling like wolves around an old, wounded animal. Through the viewport, Daniel saw their markings, the Dominion's crest. Cruel, sharp lines like claws. "They won't stop," Alira whispered. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the red emergency light. "They will chase until we are gone." Daniel glanced at her, then at Cale's terrified face. A wave of anger rose inside him. "Not while I'm here," he growled. He pulled the ship into a roll, diving into a nearby asteroid belt. Massive rocks drifted silently, turning slowly in the void. Shadows stretched across their cracked surfaces. The hunters followed. Inside the belt, the chase grew tighter. Daniel weaved the freighter between tumbling stones, scraping the hull, dodging by inches. The hunters fired again, but many shots hit the asteroids instead, bursting into clouds of glowing fragments. One hunter clipped an asteroid and spun out of control. Its wing torn away before it exploded in a ball of flame. Daniel let out a sharp breath. One down. But 3 more remained. The freighter rocked as another blast struck the shields. Warning lights blazed across the control panel. Shields at 30%, the computer droned. Daniel's hands were slick with sweat. He forced the freighter into a tight gap between 2 giant rocks. The hull scraped, metal shrieking, but they made it through. Behind them, another hunter slammed into an asteroid, shattered into debris. 2 down, Daniel muttered. His voice shook, but there was fire in his eyes. Only 2 hunters remained. They were smarter, faster. They kept their distance now, firing carefully. Each blast rattled the freighter harder, tearing at its shields. Alira stepped closer, placing a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You fight like no one I have seen, but this ship will not last much longer." Daniel didn't look at her. "Then we make it last long enough." Cale, still clinging to his mother, whispered something. His voice was small, but the translator caught the words. "He will save us." Daniel heard it and felt a surge of determination. The hunters moved in for the kill. They fired together, twin bolts slamming into the freighter's side. Alarms screamed louder. "Warning." "Shields failing," the computer announced. Daniel's eyes darted across the cockpit. Then he saw it. An asteroid with a hollow tunnel running through its center. A risk, a death trap, but maybe their only chance. He slammed the controls forward. "Hold tight." The freighter roared toward the spinning asteroid. The tunnel was narrow, barely wide enough for their ship. The hunters followed close behind. The freighter plunged into the dark tunnel, scraping. The walls, sparks flying. Rocks tore at its hull. Alira held Cale tight, her eyes shut. The hunters entered after them. Daniel twisted the ship, skimming past jagged edges. Behind, one hunter clipped the wall, shattered instantly. Fire filling the tunnel. The shockwave shook the freighter, but it kept flying. Only one hunter remained. At the tunnel's end, Daniel yanked the controls hard. The freighter shot out, into open space. The last hunter burst out seconds later, too close, too fast. Daniel grinned tightly. Got you? He cut power to the engines. The freighter dropped suddenly, drifting. The hunter overshot, speeding ahead straight into another massive asteroid. Boom, the explosion lit the dark. Silence returned. The freighter drifted, battered but alive. Daniel slumped back in his seat, sweat dripping from his forehead. He let out a long breath. We're still here. Behind him, Alira stared at him in disbelief. No one has ever escaped them like that, she whispered. No one. Cale's golden eyes shone with wonder. He's different, the boy said softly. Daniel forced a small smile. Different, huh? I'll take it. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The Dominion would not give up. This was just their first taste, and the real fight was still to come. Human courage, the freighter drifted in silence, its hull scarred, its shields almost gone. Smoke rose from cracked panels, and sparks hissed from broken wires. The ship had survived, but only just. Daniel sat in the pilot's chair, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. His hands shook slightly from the strain of the chase. He closed his eyes for a moment, but even in the darkness, he saw the hunters exploding, the asteroids spinning. Cale's frightened face. Alira stood behind him, one hand resting on her son's shoulder. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim cockpit light. She looked at Daniel for a long time before speaking. You should not be alive, she said softly. Daniel gave a tired laugh. Yeah, I hear that a lot. He opened his eyes and glanced back at her. But here we are. Cale tugged at his mother's arm. He whispered something in their language, and the translator flickered. He is not like others. Alira didn't answer, but her gaze softened slightly. The ship was broken. They could not keep running. Daniel knew it, and Alira knew it too. If the Dominion sent more hunters, and they surely would, the freighter wouldn't last. Daniel stood, wiping sweat and grease from his forehead. I'll check the damage. We've got to get this thing patched up before the next round. He left the cockpit, moving through the narrow corridors. The walls were scorched black in places, wires dangling like vines. He crouched, opening a panel, and winced at the mess inside. Burnt circuits, cracked lines, systems barely holding together. Alira followed him, silent but watchful. Cale peeked curiously over her shoulder, his glowing eyes wide as he studied Daniel's every move. You fix this? Alira asked. Daniel smirked. Well, I'll try. Humans aren't the strongest or the fastest, but we've got a talent for making broken things work again. He dug into his bag of tools, pulling out wires, connectors, and a small welder. His hands moved quickly, improvising, twisting parts together in ways they were never designed for. Sparks flew as he welded. Alira watched her head, tilting slightly. You make something new from nothing. Daniel shrugged. That's survival. You adapt, or you die. Cale whispered to his mother, then picked up a small tool from Daniel's kit. He tapped it against the wall, trying to copy what Daniel did. Daniel chuckled. Not bad, kid, he said, gently guiding Cale's hand. Hold it like this. Now twist. The boy smiled, shy but proud. For the first time, Daniel saw him not just as a frightened refugee, but as a child, curious, full of life. Hours passed. Together, they worked in the broken corridors. Daniel repaired the shields, patched the engines, and even managed to coax a little more power out of the ship's weapons. It wasn't much, but it was something. At one point, a system sparked violently, nearly burning Daniel's hand. Alira moved quickly, pulling him back. For a brief second, her touch lingered on his arm. Her eyes met his, filled with something more than fear, gratitude, and perhaps a spark of trust. "You risk yourself," she said quietly. "For us? Why?" Daniel thought for a moment before answering. "Because no one else will. And because I can't stand seeing people hunted like animals. Doesn't matter if you're human or alien. It's wrong." Alira studied him. Her people had been betrayed by many, hunted by all. Yet this human, tired, reckless, stubborn, stood with them. Not for profit, not for glory. Just because. He chose to. Later, when the ship was stable enough, they sat together in the mess hall. The room was small, with only a metal table and flickering lights. Daniel shared a ration pack, sliding half across the table. "It's not much," he said. "Tastes like cardboard, but it'll keep you alive." Alira sniffed it, clearly doubtful, but Cale took a bite and smiled faintly. Daniel laughed. "See, not so bad." For a moment, there was almost peace. But then the boy asked a question, his voice soft. The translator crackled. "Will they come again?" The smile faded from Daniel's face. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the table. "Yeah," he said. "Finally, they'll come again. The Dominion doesn't give up." Silence filled the room. Cale lowered his head, frightened. Alira's hand tightened around his. "But," Daniel added firmly, "we'll be ready. Next time, we fight smarter. Next time, they won't know what hit them." Cale looked up, eyes wide. "You will protect us." Daniel gave a small smile. "I'll do everything I can." "That's a promise." When the boy finally slept, Alira stayed behind, watching Daniel as he checked the ship's systems again. "You are strange, human," she said softly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Strange how?" "You are weak compared to them. Your ship is broken. You should have left us. But still, you stand." She paused, her voice almost a whisper. "That is courage." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled faintly. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just too stubborn to quit." Alira's lips curved into the faintest smile. It was the first time Daniel had seen her truly relax. For the first time since the chase began, hope flickered inside. The old freighter, but far away, beyond the stars, the Dominion fleet gathered. Larger ships, stronger hunters. The next storm was coming, and courage alone might not be enough. The big confrontation, the freighter floated at the edge of a dead system. Its patched hull barely holding together. Daniel stood in the cockpit, staring at the dark screen that showed the stars. He knew it was only a matter of time before the Dominion found them again. And when they did, it would not be just hunters. It would be warships. Alira stood beside him, quiet but alert, her golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. Cale sat curled in one of the seats, half asleep, his head resting against his mother's arm. Daniel broke the silence. "They'll come in force this time." Alira nodded slowly. "The Dominion never forgets. They never forgive. If they want something, they take it." Her words sent a chill down Daniel's spine, but he clenched his fists. "Then we hit them. First, surprise them, make them bleed." Alira tilted her head, studying him. "This ship is weak. You are only one man. What makes you believe we can fight them?" Daniel gave a small, grim smile. Because humans don't win by strength. We win by being unpredictable. He spent the next hours working, preparing. The freighter had almost no real weapons. But Daniel turned every broken system into something dangerous. He rewired the cargo bay doors to release junk metal like shrapnel. He rigged the coolant tanks to burst, creating sudden fog clouds in space. He even linked the failing navigation beacons to send false signals, leading enemies into traps. Alira watched him work, amazed. You take broken things and make them into weapons. Daniel shrugged. That's what humans do best. When we can't outfight, we outthink. Cale joined in, handing Daniel tools, crawling into small spaces where Daniel's hands couldn't reach. The boy's eyes sparkled with excitement instead of fear now. For the first time, he felt part of something bigger than running. The warning came suddenly. The ship's sensors lit up with red marks. Not one, not two, but a fleet. A Dominion warship flanked by 3 hunters. Daniel's stomach tightened. Showtime. The massive warship appeared in the distance, its dark hull bristling with weapons, its engines glowing like angry suns. The hunters spread out in formation, moving swiftly to surround the freighter. A cold voice echoed over the comms, translated from the Dominion tongue. Surrender the fugitives. Do this, and we may let you live. Alira's face hardened. They will not let you live. They lie. Daniel smirked. Yeah, I figured. He flipped a switch. Let's give them a proper welcome. The hunters swooped in first, fast and deadly. Daniel triggered the modified cargo doors. Clouds of junk metal exploded into space, spinning wildly. One hunter plowed through, its shield sparking as the metal tore across its hull. It spun out, smoking before crashing into an asteroid. Cale cheered, his voice echoing in the small cockpit. Alira's eyes widened in shock. You destroyed them. With trash, Daniel grinned. Never underestimate trash. The second hunter fired plasma, bolts striking the freighter. The ship rocked violently, alarms screaming. Daniel pulled the freighter into a dive, dragging the hunter closer. Then he triggered the coolant burst. A cloud of frozen vapor erupted behind them. Blinding the hunter's sensors, it flew straight into a rock, vanishing in an explosion of fire. 2 down, Daniel muttered. But the warship was still there, its weapons locking on. Bolts of energy streaked past, shaking the freighter. Daniel pushed the engines to their limit, weaving between asteroids, but the warship was relentless. They're too big, Daniel said, sweat dripping down his face. I can't take that thing head on. Alira stepped forward, her golden eyes glowing brighter. For the first time, Daniel saw something strange, a soft pulse of light rippling through her skin. There is one thing I can do, she said, quietly, but it is dangerous. Daniel glanced at her. Dangerous how? My people, we have gifts. Power in our minds, but using it burns us. It could kill me. Daniel shook his head instantly. No, I'm not letting you do that, Alira's gaze was steady. If I do nothing, Cale dies, you die, I die. We cannot outrun them forever. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at Cale, who stared at him with wide, trusting eyes. Then back at Alira, whose face was calm but resolute. He swallowed hard. If you're doing this, then we do it together. They faced the warship, its guns charged, glowing with deadly light. Daniel steered the freighter straight at it, dodging incoming fire by inches. The shield screamed under the strain, sparks flying across the cockpit. Alira closed her eyes. Her body trembled, golden light spreading across her skin like fire beneath glass. Suddenly, the warship systems flickered. Its weapons dimmed. Engines sputtered. The massive ship shook as if something was crawling inside its circuits. Daniel's eyes widened. "You're shutting them down." Elira's voice was strained, broken. "Not for long. Finish it." Daniel seized the moment. He slammed the freighter's last weapon, a jury-rigged missile, straight into the warship's weak point. The explosion ripped across its side, tearing through armor, sending flames spilling into space. The warship groaned, cracked, and then shattered in a blinding explosion. Silence, the freighter floated, shaking, but alive. The stars glowed cold. Around them, the battlefield littered with burning debris. Daniel turned to Elira. She had collapsed, her body weak, her skin dimming. Cale cried out, clinging to her hand. Daniel knelt beside her. "Stay with me. You did it. We're alive." Her golden eyes fluttered open, faint but steady. She whispered, "Not because of me, because of us." Daniel held her hand tightly, his voice low but fierce. "Then we keep fighting, together." The Resolution and Future Hook, the battlefield drifted in silence. Broken metal, glowing debris, and the wreckage of Dominion. Hunters floated through the endless black. Where once there had been death chasing them, now there was only quiet. Inside the battered freighter, Daniel sat slumped in the pilot's chair. His arms ached, his throat was dry, and every nerve in his body still buzzed with adrenaline. They had done the impossible. A single man, an alien mother. And her child had destroyed a Dominion warship. But victory had a price. Elira lay weak on a bunk. Her golden glow faint, her breaths shallow. Cale knelt beside her, holding her hand tightly. His young face pale with worry. "Mother," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Don't leave me." Elira opened her eyes slowly. She gave her son a small, tired smile. "I am here, little one. I will not leave you. Not yet." Daniel stood nearby, his jaw clenched. He had seen brave people before, but never anyone like her. She had burned herself to cripple a warship, risking everything to protect her child and him too. "You need rest," Daniel said firmly. "Don't push yourself." Elira's eyes shifted to him, soft but steady. "You saved us." Again, Daniel shook his head. "No, we saved each other. That's the only way we got out alive." The ship groaned, still wounded from the battle. Daniel checked the systems. Shields were almost gone. Engines were weak. Food and fuel supplies were running low. They could not keep drifting forever. He returned to the bunk and crouched down beside Cale. "Hey kid," he said gently, "your mom's strong. She just needs time. And while she rests, I'll make sure this ship keeps flying." Cale nodded. Though tears shimmered in his glowing eyes, Daniel put a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Listen to me. I promised I'd protect you. And I don't break promises. Understand?" Cale's lips trembled, but he whispered, "Understand." The days that followed were hard. Daniel worked around the clock, patching holes in the hull, coaxing more power from the dying engines, and searching star maps for safe routes. Elira rested most of the time, her strength slowly returning, though the glow in her skin still flickered weakly. Cale stayed close to Daniel, following him like a shadow. He asked questions about every tool, every repair, every button on the console. Daniel answered patiently, teaching the boy in simple words. "You see this?" Daniel showed him a broken circuit. "It's no good like this. But if you bend it here, add this wire, it works again." Sometimes things aren't useless. They just need a new chance. Cale's eyes lit up. "Like us." Daniel paused, then smiled. "Exactly like us." One evening, Elira managed to sit up in the cockpit. She watched Daniel guide the freighter through a cluster of stars. His hands moved across the controls with focus and calm. "You risked everything for us," she said softly. Daniel glanced at her, then back at the stars. "I didn't plan to. I just wanted a cheap ship. But life doesn't always care about plans." Elira's lips curved faintly, and now Daniel thought for a moment. "Now, I think this ship isn't just mine anymore. It's ours." Her eyes lingered on him, full of something unspoken: gratitude, trust, maybe even hope. But hope was fragile. The Dominion would not stop. They had lost hunters and a warship that would only make them angrier. Somewhere out there, more ships were already hunting. Daniel knew it. Elira knew it too. And yet, for the first time, the fear did not crush them. Because now they were not just fugitives hiding in the dark. They were a crew. A family. On the third day, the freighter finally limped into a small, forgotten star system. A lonely planet circled a dying sun, its surface barren, but empty of Dominion patrols. It was not home, but it was safe for now. Daniel set the freighter down on a rocky plain. Dust swirled around them as the landing gear groaned into place. He leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "We made it." For now, Elira stepped beside him, still weak but standing. Kale clung to her hand. Daniel looked at them both. "You don't have to run alone anymore. Not while I'm here." Lyra's golden eyes met his. "Why, you owe us nothing. You could leave. You should leave." Daniel shook his head firmly. "I could, but I won't. Because that's not who I am, and maybe it's not who humans are." The words hung in the air, heavy and true. Elira studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Perhaps humans are stranger than I thought." Daniel chuckled. "Yeah, we're strange. But sometimes strange is what saves the day." Kale smiled for the first time in days. He whispered, "Strange, but kind." Daniel looked out at the stars through the cracked viewport. Somewhere out there, the Dominion was regrouping, planning their next strike. But for now, he allowed himself a rare moment of peace. He had set out to buy a ship. Nothing more. But instead, he had found a child, a mother, and something greater than credits or cargo, a reason to fight as the freighter powered down for the night. The stars outside shimmered quietly. The ship looked old, broken, forgotten, but inside, it carried a spark that the Dominion could never crush. Elira closed her eyes, resting her head against the wall. Kale drifted into sleep beside her. Daniel stayed in the cockpit, his hand resting on the worn controls. He whispered to himself, a promise only the stars could hear. They'll come again, and when they do, we'll be ready. The freighter glowed faintly against the endless dark. It was no longer just a ship. It was the beginning of something greater.